It's time to go ahead and start turning our parts. We talked about loading a tool and loading a part in the lathe. Now it's time to actually get to business. So to start with, we're going to look at our plans. Right? And these are the plans for the steel piece. When we first load this into the lathe, we're actually going to have the part oriented this way with this fatter portion in the collet. I want to set myself up so that I can do all of this turning and this work in one setup. So I want to make sure that I have at least 2.5 inches of this part sticking out of the collet. So I'm going to take a ruler, I'm going to push it against the collet here, and right there I'm at about 2 3/4, 2 5/8. I'm going to go ahead and finish up here and tighten my part in to the collet, and I'll be ready to go. And we'll talk about zeroing our digital readout here and actually cutting. So I locked my collet closer. I'm going to double check, make sure that I have more than 2.5 inches sticking out, and I'm ready to go. Now the DRO is up here. It's called the DRO because it stands for digital readout. What that does is it keeps track of where the cutter is on the lathe. Now we can set this based on where our part is. So to start, I'm going to zero my DRO on the outside diameter of the part. That will keep track of how far I've moved in, okay, and that will tell me about what my diameter is on the part. And then I'm going to face the part and zero the DRO, and that will tell me where I am moving in toward the headstock, and that will keep track of these dimensions here. So to touch off, okay, first we've calculated our speed for turning here. It's going to be 1200 based on our calculation. So I'm going to set the lathe to 1200. I'm going to turn it on, and I'm going to touch off on the outside part. I'm going to bring the cross slide in real slow until I just hear or see little metal shavings coming off here. Once you see it start shaving, you're going to come up here to the correct axis, hit 0. Now this will keep track of how far I move the cross slide in and out. If I do my math correctly, right, I have a 1-inch bar right now, and I need to get down to 875 thousandths. If I subtract 875 thousandths from 1 inch, okay, that will tell me I need to be 125 thousandths in on my DRO when I'm done turning this particular diameter. To do the face, or touch off on the face, okay, we're actually going to have to cut material. Okay, the end of this bar is really rough, and I need it to be a perfectly flat surface. So I'm going to turn the machine on, touch off, and I'm going to start cleaning this up. And the second I have a clean surface, I will then zero my other axis on the DRO. So here we go. There's my touch off. I'm going to take about 10 thousandths, move in. Okay, if I shut this off and take a look, I've cut the entire surface. So right now the end of my workpiece and the cutter head are in the exact same plane. I can come up to my DRO, zero that. Now what that will do for me is keep track of how far I've moved the carriage, okay, left and right. That will again tell me where I need to stop when cutting these two particular diameters. Alright, I'm getting ready to go ahead and turn this 875 thousandths diameter. The 875 thousandths diameter goes 2 inches 500 thousandths from the end of the part. I want to stop short of that and do the last full cut at the very end. So when I'm going to stop at 2 inches 490 thousandths on my DRO. So I'm going to get myself kind of oriented here. I'm going to come up and look at my DRO and make sure that my depth of cut here I'm going to set for 25 thousandths. Okay, so there is 0. So I'm in line with my part. I'm going to go 25 thousandths further. And I'm going to move the carriage until this reads 2 inches 490 thousandths. Coming up on 200, or 2 inches 490. We're going to slow down and stop. I'm going to bring the carriage all the way back to the end of the part. So I'm ready to go ahead and dial in my second cut. So I'm going to dial in another 25 thousandths, so to take us to a grand total of 50. And I'm going to continue down to my 2 inches 490 thousandths dimension. We're going to have to do this in a few passes. I will periodically stop to check the diameter with the micrometer to make sure that I am not going past my 875 thousandths dimension that I'm shooting for. Close, 249, all the way back out. We're going to take one more pass, and then we're going to measure with the micrometer here. Back out. I'm going to shut the machine off here, and I'm going to measure this diameter. If my math is correct, okay, I should still have about 50 thousandths more to go. So I'm going to measure real quick. And right now I'm at 930 thousandths, and I have to get to 875. So my quick math tells me I've got about 55 thousandths left on this pass. So I'm going to continue taking 25 thousandths at a time until I get to about 120 thousandths, and then I'm going to double check my measurement again for my final pass to really dial in that 875 thousandths. So we'll dial in another about 25. And we'll cut. So I'm going to stop at 120. I'm going to make this pass, and then I'm going to measure again with the micrometer to dial in a really, really close cut for my final pass here. You stop at 2 inches 490. We're going to measure again. And I am at 885 thousandths. Okay, that tells me to get to 875, I have to take another 10 thousandths of an inch off. So on my depth of cut, I'm going to go an additional 10 thousandths, okay, which is about there. And now this is my last pass. I'm going to go all the way to 2.5 inches. When I get to the end of the cut here, at my 2.5, I'm going to bring the carriage out to give us a nice clean corner there. Comes 2 inches 49. I'm going to keep going to 2 inches 500. Okay, there I am, and I'm going to come out with the cross slide. This should now be 875 thousandths in diameter. And it's 875 thousandths on the dot. So what I've done now is I've turned the last 2.5 inches of this part to 875 thousandths. My next step will be repeat the exact same process, except I'm going to turn the last 1.5 inches on my part down to 750 thousandths. So I'm only going to be cutting the last 1.5 inches. I'm not going to change any settings on my DRO, okay, because I need the same zero on going laterally, and I need the same zero moving forward. I'm going to take 25 thousandths at a time until I get close, and I'm going to continue to measure and then dial in that last pass. Alright, before I move on to my next turning operation, I want to remove the rat's nest down here. The last thing I want is for this stuff to get hung up on this part and start whipping around. So I'm going to move the carriage out of the way. I'm going to grab a brush, and I'm going to basically sweep this all into the bottom of the tray, or the tray of the lathe here. So get that all out of the way. That way nothing is going to get caught, okay, and flung around while I'm in the midst of my cut. So again, I'm going to go ahead and turn this last 1.5 inches, okay, down to 750 thousandths, which is what our plans tell us we need to do. So the process is going to be exactly the same as it was to turn the 875 thousandths diameter. I do remember that on my last pass here I was at 130 thousandths on my DRO, so I'm going to add 25 to that and go to 155 thousandths. Okay, that should take another 25 thousandths off. On this dimension now, I'm only cutting to 1.5 inches. So my stop number here is going to be 1.490 inches. So that's where I'm going to stop on my DRO there. There's 1.49. I'm going to back the carriage out, take another 25 thousandths. I'm going to take a quick measure to see where I'm at and determine how much more I need to remove. So right now I am at 700 and I'm almost at 800 thousandths. So I should have about 50 more thousandths to go. So we'll do another 25. Okay, this pass I'm only going to take about 10 because I want to do one more pass, measure, and dial in that final cut so I get a nice clean surface finish. We'll go back down to our 1 inch 490 thousandths. Come back out and we'll take a measure for our final pass. Okay, I am at 767 thousandths. So according to this, I have 17 thousandths more to take off to get down to 750. So we'll go 17. That's 10. I'm going to actually go 16 and we'll see what happens. So this should, in theory, right, get this end part down to 750 thousandths. Again, now I'm going to go to my full 1.5 inches this way, and then I'm going to back out when I get down to that number. There's 1.5 out on the cross side and out of the way. We'll check this. See how close I got. And that is, I'm a 749.5 thousandths, so I'm a half a thousand short. I can live with that. That is, folks, how you're going to go ahead and turn to a diameter and face and then nice and clean. Alright, after we have turned and faced this particular portion of our part, these corners are very, very sharp, so we need to deburr with a file. Nice thing about the lathe is we can turn the lathe on and gently bring the file across here, cleaning up these corners. We don't want to spend too much time, we don't want to round them over or give them a chamfer, we just want to clean up these sharp edges. The end here is easy. Here it's going to be a little bit tricky because we don't have much room to get the file in there before it contacts this portion, and then we will have the same issue going here. We want to make sure we don't hit the collet or the spindle, and we don't want to run into this. So real light passes, make sure you keep your fingers away from the workpiece and gently file those radii. So that cleaned all these up, so now they're not super sharp and I'm not worried about cutting myself.